Hi, first grade. Happy Tuesday. Today we're going to jump right into math. Rashid's here. He wanted me to do that. He loves pouncing around the house. So yesterday we got good at being robots. Robots do the same thing every time like a machine. Today we're taking it a step further. All my little robots, today you are going to also be detectives. Detectives have to take their thinking one step further. They need to look very closely and they need to be careful. That's why Rashid has his magnifying glass and he also has his stop sign so that he can stop and think every time he needs to. So today for your math practice, it's going to be a little bit different because you're not going to just have problems with regrouping. You're going to have some addition problems that need regrouping and some addition problems that don't. Guess what? You have to be the detective and decide. Let's practice that decision. Right here, I have two different problems. One needs to be regrouped, one does not. Let's try it out. Rashid, let's start with this one here. Let's take a very close look. And let's also remember what we need to do if we need to regroup. Then we get to do our robot actions. So, to know whether or not we need to regroup, we need to look at the ones. Here they are. Rashid, what is 8 plus 8? Doubles fact. 16. Is it more than 10? Yes. If it's more than 10, I must regroup. I must regroup. I must regroup. Oh, sorry, I got stuck. Bottom line, if you add up the ones and they're more than 10, you must regroup. So let's do it. Oh, I left my markers over there. All right. 8 plus 8 is 16. Now I want to be a robot since I know I need to regroup. Add the ones. 16 is 1 10 and 6 ones. So I'm hanging up my 10. Now I can add up all my 10s. Not just the 3 and 1, but also the extra one I added. What is 3 plus 1 plus 1? 5. That's a nice healthy number there. 38 plus 18 is 56. Fantastic job, guys. I was a detective and a robot. Now, Rashid, what should we do the next one? Okay. Next one is 17 plus 12. I need to look at the ones. First, I always need to look at the ones. All right, let's do it. What is 7 plus 2? 9. Is 9 more than 10? Nope. Guess what? I don't need to regroup. If it's less than 10, you don't need to regroup. If it's less than 10, you don't need to regroup. If it's less than, sorry, I got stuck again. The point is, 7 plus 2 is less than 10. I don't need to regroup. 7 plus 2 is 9. There's no 10 to hang up. Now I can just go straight over and add up my 2 10s. 1 plus 1 is 2. 17 plus 12 is 29. Great job, guys. Your practice today is 12 problems just like that. But be careful. They don't all need regrouping. You have to decide. Remember, add up your ones first. If it's more than 10, you must regroup. If it's less than 10, you can't regroup, okay? So don't try to hang up a 1 if you're not regrouping, okay? Have a lot of fun with this. Look. Be good detectives, guys. I can't wait to see how it goes. Today, I also want to share with you about blizzards. What is a blizzard? Well, a lot of people think that a blizzard is just like a hurricane, except with snow instead of water. They're actually very, very different. We learned yesterday that a hurricane needs a really kind of special set of circumstances to happen. Do you remember our recipe? We put in, to make a hurricane, Coriolis effect. We put in warm ocean waters. And what were the other things we put in? There was one other thing. Oh, I know. Thunderstorms that were already forming. And then finally, we needed something to give it all a push. A blizzard can actually happen much more easily. It doesn't need a big recipe, but it doesn't happen that often either because it needs it to be very cold and it needs it to be very windy. Those are the two things that a blizzard needs: strong winds and cold temperatures. This little book tells us a little bit about blizzards. You can definitely learn more. It says here, what is a blizzard? Mix together strong winds and heavy snow. Not light snow, guys. Heavy snow. What do you get? A blizzard. Blizzards are one of nature's most powerful storms. Blizzards only happen when it's cold. Why? On warm days, clouds make rain. But on very cold days, the water that falls to earth is frozen, and that makes snow. We know that from kind of looking at weather in other ways over the last few weeks. Did you know that snow contains a lot of air? That makes it much lighter than water. So it blows when the winds are strong. Snow blowing and clouding your vision can be a lot more dangerous even than heavy rain. In a blizzard, it does not just snow. It snows and snows and snows. A little snow is fun, but a lot of snow can be dangerous. Billions of snowflakes fall in a blizzard. All of them have 6 sides, but guess what? Each snowflake is a little bit different. Every single one. I bet you guys knew that. Today I'm sending you a fun activity you can do to make your own very different snowflakes, and also a fun experiment you can try. But look, take a close look here at some of the very different snowflakes. Very different shapes. Which one is your favorite? Yeah. I'm putting Rashid here a second because I just realized I need to plug in my computer. I'll be right back. Whew. That was close. It would have been really bad if I lost you. All right, so another really neat way to learn about storms is what a lot of you did yesterday: history reporting. History reporting takes you back in time to see what something was like for someone a while back. Maybe it was just last year, maybe it was last week, maybe it was 100 years ago. Well, to tell you a little more about blizzards, I found one of my favorite books from when I was younger. It's actually a whole series, and some of you might be familiar with it. The author is Laura Ingalls Wilder, and she told these stories. They're based on her own experiences as a child. She lived out in the plains, which are the grasslands of America, and they would get really powerful blizzards rolling across the plains where she lived. They only lived in a cabin made of wood, so you can imagine that a blizzard was a big deal. Listen to how they experienced a blizzard. On Saturday, the sun was shining and the wind was blowing softly from the south. Pa was hauling hay from the homestead for the cow and horses must eat a great deal of hay to keep themselves warm in the winter. In the sunshine from the western windows, Mary rocked gently, that's Laura's sister, and Laura's steel knitting needles flashed. Here they are, sitting in their chairs. Laura was knitting lace, a fine white thread to trim a petticoat. She sat close to the window and watched the street, for she was expecting Mary Power and Minnie Johnson. They were coming to spend the afternoon, bringing their crocheting. Mary was talking about college that perhaps someday she could go to. Suddenly, Laura saw the spool of thread drop from Mary's lap and roll away on the floor as she jumped up. "What's the matter?" Mary cried out. "The light's gone," Laura said. There was suddenly no sunshine. The air was gray, and the note of the wind was rising. Ma came hurrying in from the kitchen. "Storm's coming, girls," she had time to say, and then the house struck as the storm struck it. The house shook as the storm struck it. The darkening shops and houses across the street disappeared in a sudden whirl of snow. "Oh, I wish Charles had got home," Ma said. That's their dad, Ma's husband. Laura turned from the window. She drew Mary's chair over to the heater, and from the coal hod she shoveled more coal onto the fire. Suddenly the storm wind howled into the kitchen. The back door slammed hard, and Pa came in, snowy and laughing. "I beat the blizzard to the stable by the width of a gnat's eyebrow," he laughed. "The horses stretched out and came lickety-split. We made it just in the nick of time. This is one blizzard that got fooled." Ma took his coat and folded it. "Oh, as long as you're here," she murmured. Pa sat down and leaned to the heater, holding out his hands to warm them. But he was uneasily listening to the rising wind. Before long, he started up from his chair. "I'm going to go do the chores before this gets any worse," he said. "It may take me some time, but don't worry. I'll use your clothesline to get me back safe." He was gone till dark and longer. Supper was waiting when he came in, stamping his feet and rubbing his ears. "Gosh, but it's growing cold fast," he exclaimed. "The snow strikes like a buckshot. And listen to that wind howl." "I suppose this is going to block the trains," Ma said. "Oh, it certainly shall," said Pa, "but we've lived without a railroad before. We're snug and warm, and we have all we need. Now let's have that hot supper." "And after supper, Pa, will you play the fiddle, please?" Laura said. "Please." So after supper, Pa called for his fiddle, and Laura brought it to him. But she couldn't listen peacefully. Queer shivers tingled up her backbone as she listened to the wild notes of the wind flickering high above it, beating the house. Her scalp prickled, and still the wild changing melody that came from the fiddle till she couldn't bear it any more. She cried, "What is it, Pa? What is that tune?" "Listen." Pa stopped playing and held his bow still above the strings. "The tune is Outdoors. I was only following it." They all listened to the winds playing that tune until Ma said, "We will likely hear enough of that without your playing it, Charles." "Well, we'll have something different then," Pa agreed, and he picked a different song. When he laid his fiddle in the box later, he meant that now it was bedtime. It was hard to leave the warm room and go upstairs. Laura knew that it was cold up there. The downstairs windows were thickly covered with frost and snow, so she wrapped 2 hot flat irons in their flannels and led the way. Mary and Carrie, her sisters, followed. Upstairs, the air was so cold that it shriveled up the insides of their noses, while they unbuttoned and dropped their shoes and shivered into their pajamas. Their teeth chattered as they crawled into bed. The deep roar and shrill cry of the wind were all around them in that little space of stillness. Laura's teeth were clenched and rattling. She stood at the window in her nightdress. She had scraped away the frost from a place on the glass, and she was trying to look through it. She cupped her hands beside her eyes to try to shield them from the glimmer of the lamplight in her room. But she could still see nothing. "I'm trying to see a light," she explained. "The other houses are right across the street. There must be a light. But I can't see anything." She had not even been able to see the light from the window downstairs out the window, where she knew it should be shining. Everyone was quiet now in their beds. "Good night and sweet dreams," Ma said. Can you imagine falling asleep in a storm like this? But even after Laura was warm, she lay awake listening to the wind's wild tune and thinking of each little house in town alone in the whirling snow, with not even a light from the next house shining through. And the little town was alone on the wide prairie. For the storm was white. In the night, long after the sun had gone and the last daylight could not possibly be there, the blizzard was still whirling white. Lamps could shine out through the blackest darkness, and a shout could be heard a long way, but no light and no cry could reach through this storm that had wild voices and unnatural light of its own. The blankets were warm, and Laura was no longer cold, but still she shivered. And then the next chapter actually tells about what they find when they go outside the next day. Deep, deep, deep drifts of snow, and it's even still snowing. Sometimes it would snow for 3 or 4 days in one blizzard. It's amazing to think about and scary too. But I keep coming back to, could you have fallen asleep in that like they did? That would have been scary, right? Well, the final way that we can talk about and experience weather we saw last week was through music. And this is one kind of storm that did remind me of another piece of music that I really love. I want to tell you a little bit before I go about Richard Strauss. I see my S got cut off, but he wrote something called an Alpine Symphony. He lived in Europe, and he wrote this in 1915. That was over 100 years ago. And the Alpine Symphony is something called a tone poem. That's a piece of music that tells a story. His story is about a climb in the Alps mountains where the snow falls deep, 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 and the winters are brutal. So he actually wrote this about any kind of storm in the Alps mountains, but listening to it reminds me of what I imagine a blizzard must sound like. See if you can hear the flutes and the other instruments sounding just like the whirling wind and the flying snowflakes. Let's listen for just a minute before Rashid and I let you get back to your day. Technical difficulties. Thanks for being patient, guys. Sorry about that. Here we go. Okay, listen. Can you feel the wind? Can you feel the snowflakes? That's just a tiny, tiny listen. That's just a tiny, tiny listen to that one part of the song. But my goodness, Was that intense or what? So if you like, you can listen to the whole thing. But didn't that sound just like the story described it? Whirling and swirling and falling. Really cool and amazing how God made us so that we could capture those sights and sounds from nature in art and music too. Just amazing. Well, that's all for today. Sorry I couldn't quite get my act together there with the music, but thanks for being patient, and I hope you guys have a wonderful day. Bye.